I'm very delighted to be here, and my thanks to the Arts Council and to Ginny Murray from Children's Books Ireland for inviting me to announce Ireland's second Laureate Nanook. You are right, Chairperson, when you refer to my emphasis on creativity and the importance of children's literature. It's very interesting. I saw as well just recently a production of The Happy Prince, and I've thought about what's behind, if you like, the beauty of a story like that. And I think above all else, I think it's important to realise that there is a very powerful ethic at the back of working for children, respecting the integrity of their curiosity more than anything else. C.S. Lewis, who is famous not only for his own work but for his son's work in another field, he talked about having breakfast in a hotel dining room, and at a certain point he said a little too loudly, "I loathe prunes." So do I, came an unexpected 60-year-old voice from another table. Neither of us thought it funny. He would say, "We both knew that prunes are far too nasty to be funny." And that, he would sort of conclude, is the proper meeting between man and child as independent personalities. I have often, I remember in my other life, giving the Open Mind lecture and speaking about, indeed it's a theme I used in one of my poems as well. It's in my poem The Inter, I think, for a teenage child, a poem I wrote for my daughter about interfering as she was preparing for the Inter, about the importance had I disrupted a child's curiosity. And children's literature is a very interesting area. I'm just back from the United States, but we're looking at, when I met some of the film community, I saw a very wonderful presentation of the Cinderella story from the stepmother's point of view. And it won a nomination. And she is there with her walking aid. And she said, "They didn't want me in their big castle," she said. "They knew I would be out of place." And then there's a beautiful line near the end of it where they say, "And I suppose you think I forgave them all." And she says, "Don't be ridiculous." Well, I've just often thought about children's stories. They carriers of all sorts of messages, and it's wonderful to see it all opening up. I had a look at the books you sent on to me, and they were very impressive. I think that Lewis understood that we meet children as equals in that part of our nature where we are their equals. And he believed, as I do, that the child as reader is neither to be patronised nor idolised, because the notion of there being literature that can be absolutely appropriate and so forth is kind of a hard message to take. While I'm at it, I think as well, what I found fascinating about is when I go into libraries, and all of the libraries, I mean, it's good, the libraries have improved. And when I see those new architecturally designed libraries that have children's story wells and where people, and the fine big books, I'll come to it in a moment as well, it's the way the children handle books. And it's nice to have a book that feels right and that looks right. I think about reading as well. I've often said that I keep repeating that if every child was able to read, able to swim, and had access to a musical instrument, you had a powerful set of equipment for life. I think that the Narnia, when I began to deliberately use Lewis, because the Narnia author believed that there were three approaches one could take. The first and the worst way was to look at children as just another niche market. You figured out what you think that they want and you give it to them, however little you like it yourself. There was something always kind of sad about people who went into shops, adults, and saying is that, what age is this for now? Well, they'll have to try harder. And the second is the kind that grows organically out of the story told to an individual child. One thinks of Lewis Carroll and Alice Hargraves or A. Milne or his son Christopher Robin. I was watching on television last night after I came back, Terry Pratchett talking. He was a slow learner, reader, and his mother gave him a penny for every page she would read in the book. But then he got getting faster and faster, and he wanted to read The Wind and the Willows. And she didn't have to pay him to read The Wind and the Willows at all, because he was by then going to the libraries. And I think this is just so important. But the third approach that Lewis had in mind, he said it was really quite simple. Write a children's story because it's the best form to say what you have to say. And those who want to hear what you have to say will read it or reread it at any age. And that is certainly true. The sheer beauty, for example, of Oscar Wilde's story, which has been, it just goes on and on. The use as well, which we'll come to, of image and of and illustration, and also that it is illustrating something very beautiful, a beautiful ethical fable, not carrying a heavy message. So it's fear made sin then Moss good night no unhappy prince Tom Ascade egg agus éasta laur classic of the first. But how do we ensure then that the young people are introduced to the best children's literature of past and present? All one ever does is that one facilitates it, and it is important as an aspect of democracy and culture that one can experience the sheer joy and enrichment of books from the earliest of ages. I have a great noticed as well, I think, if I look back on it from my time as a sociologist, is that an enormous amount of children have learned to read with the assistance of their mothers. But it's very important in our gender equal age that both parents be involved. And I think reading the story, allowing the child to read the story, to wanting to go on, and what happened next, and then, and on it goes. So I think that it's important that we raise the profile of this literature in Ireland, and that we strengthen this unique sector. I am an advocate that the libraries be well stocked, and we need to think it very, very carefully. The fact of the matter is there's very good studies in South America about, there was actually an ideological and political battle about the use of cartoons and so forth. Children's stories, children's illustrations carry messages, and the messages should be ones that allow, if you like, the full openness of one's mind. I think that it was to address such questions about raising the sector that Laureate was established originally. And as we have heard, Chair, as you have said, Chair, each laureate may select a specific focus for their term, so he or she can choose to participate in a range of events and initiatives that is three slimlet vision is glim gograg spanaktot snenihe around it too. So I think that whatever you choose to do, I wish you success with it. And it should be very exciting. And also in relation to the public discourse about literature and young people. It isn't literature can't be didactic, but the way it is used isn't quite neutral either. I've had a few, Bob Collins is here, he will remember me and the views I had about the use of children in advertising and television. I have I'm not free now to offer those views as publicly as I want. But I am free to say that I haven't changed my mind. But, so the laureate can be a writer or an illustrator. Now that's really important because before there were words, there were sensations, and people were given responses to stories. So naturally he or she will have made a significant contribution to the field, and because that role entails connecting directly with children and young people, and I'm so delighted that there's so many of you here. You're especially welcome. You're up there now as the kind of the judges of the whole thing. And it needs someone who can marry enthusiasm and skill in promoting children's literature. And it is, when I say it is pre-verbal in many ways, the reaction of very small children to sounds is just very honest, and it's usually a reaction that is multisensorial, and it demands something more than the children's writer illustrator It is the power of a child's curiosity is something what's engaged with. It can make bears walk and talk, and it can lead you hastily down lots of rabbit holes and so forth. It can turn wardrobes, as in Lewis's cases, into doors into distant worlds. And it's that imaginative power innate in all of us that is vivid and alive in our very youngest children. It's a society's greatest strength, but it's also society's greatest vulnerability. And that is where a huge ethical ethos surrounds it. The stories we create for today's child will shape the character to some extent and the ideals of tomorrow's adult. And I'm glad to say that the new laureate for children's literature, the whole structure of the awards understands this very well. But the new, I must say, I pay tribute to the outgoing laureate, and thank you for all of your work and for what you have brought, how you brought it on. But I looked at Niamh Sharkey's work, and you sent me over some books, The Giant Turnipper, On the Road with Mavis and Marge, and it showed a wonderful style. You have a wide range of images. So the use of colour in the illustrations intrigues the reader, and it contributes very, very well to the telling and to the, as I would say, the presentation of the stories as they will be. So it gives me great pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to give Cór at Caroliohar, Niamh Sharkey, with her new Medal of Office. I'm going to present it to her now, and my best wishes to you.